Hey guys, I'm Dave Trull and welcome to the Trull Gallery. I recently got a call from a customer who was getting a new roof. Problem was the fascia on the back of her house was rotted and needed to be replaced. In this short video, or should I say series of stills, I will show you how I handled that job and some of the tricks I use because, well, I work alone. I apologize for not having actual video for this, but when I'm on the clock, I don't like to take the time to set up the camera and get the shots just right. I just as soon get the job done and be on my way. That, and it was about 100 degrees plus or minus with the heat index, and well, by the end of the day, I was pretty done. Let's take a look at how the job went.
Here you can see the old fascia and two things that need fixing: the rot and the spray foam. While spray foam has its uses, this really isn't one of them. Please don't use it where it's going to be exposed to sunlight or moisture. That's just asking for problems down the road. The first step was to remove the old soffit. This one was a simple to use vinyl soffit. You can flex the soffit panels and pop them out of the front and back tracks that they sit in. These came in panels of about 24 inches wide and they just slide together. Once the panels were out, I removed the retaining track that was screwed to the fascia. There was one piece of the soffit that I wasn't able to remove, but it was out of the way enough for me to work around it. Once the soffit was out of the way, I carefully removed the old fascia. And by carefully, I mean I wailed on it with a framing hammer. Once all the boards were removed, I went back and pulled out any nails that would be in the way of the new fascia, including nails coming down from the roof and or the drip edge. I think that exterior trim should be primed before installation, and to save time, I purchased pre-primed 1x6 pine. I also got lucky, and when I ripped the soffit to width, the leftover strips were the correct width for the secondary strip. Before installing them, I took the time to prime the exposed edges that I cut. It was time to install the new fascia, but I worked by myself. Even though I was using 8-foot stock, it would still be awkward to handle and install correctly alone. I planned ahead and created these two wooden L brackets. I clamped them to the underside of two rafter tails, and they held the stock in place. Once I had a piece in place, I made sure that the end was in the middle of a rafter tail. For some reason, the rafters were at random lengths and not a standard 16 or 24 inches on center. So I marked the correct length, cut the stock, primed the end, and then put it back on my L brackets. I soldered an 8-penny, 2.5-inch galvanized nail on one end, holding the stock in place, but I only drove it in far enough to hold it in place. Then I went to the far end and drove in a nail there. Then I checked to see if the first nail needed adjustment. If everything was good, then I went back and added 2 nails through the fascia board into each rafter tail. As I worked my way down the roof, I ensured that I kept the fascia tight to the roof and the rafter tails. In this case, it caused a little waviness, but the house isn't exactly square. Another option is to run the fascia boards wide and cut them after the fact, leaving a nice clean line. But I'm not a fan of running a circular saw over my head. The last step here was to run a bead of caulk at each joint to seal things up. The secondary fascia board was added in a similar way, but this time held in place by a couple of quick grip clamps. I started at the opposite end of the wider boards to stagger the joints. And I didn't worry about ending each strip on a joist end, since the larger board supported the smaller board across its full length. Then it was time to set one nail, this time galvanized 6-penny 2-inch finish nails, and then I set the other end. And then I went back and filled in with the rest of the nails. I put nails in at each rafter location and sometimes in between when the span seemed too wide. Like I said, there was no 16 or 24 inches on center here. The rafters were kind of random. The last piece was the only one that I had to cut to length. Once it was cut, I went back and primed it before installing it. Finally, I went back and caulked those seams as well. Now, I didn't caulk the seams between the large and small fascia boards. I thought it best to keep them open in case any water got in from above. That way it would have a place to drain out. The last step on the fascia was to go back and prime all the exposed nail heads, just to make it a little neater. Now it was time to replace the soffit. I started by screwing the outer track to the bottom of the new fascia board with 1¼ inch exterior screws. Since this was vinyl, the preferred method is to use the slots in the track and to put the screws in snug but not tight, since vinyl moves with temperature changes. Once the track was installed, you can pop the soffit pieces in place. This can be a bit of a juggling act, since you have to keep the first piece in the front and rear track, and then pull out the far front corner, slide the second piece in to lock them together, and then pop them into the front track. Just be patient, it'll all come together. Since I was asked to use the existing soffit, I had to be careful to maintain the same spacing as before. Once I connected 2 pieces of soffit, I pulled them snug to ensure that they were fully locked in on the side where they were connected. It would be a pain if you got to the end of the run and found yourself a few inches short. You'd have to go back and pull each joint apart, wrestling with a bunch of plastic that really doesn't want to move.
After several hours, I got the fascia replaced and put the soffit back in. And while I would have preferred to put up a new soffit, it wasn't in the budget right now. But my client did say that she was going to have me back soon and do that. I'd love to hear what you think about this video. If I could have done something better, different, smarter, easier, please let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up and maybe share it with your friends and family. And as always, if you'd like to see what's coming up next, hit that subscribe button. I've got a few furniture builds coming up. There's always some repair here and there. And who knows what's going to go on with this 95-year-old house of mine. That always needs a little work. And if you'd like to help support the channel, we've got these great Trull Gallery t-shirts for men and women, and I'll leave a link for those below. So for now, have a great day. Thanks for checking us out. See you soon.